This is something productivity YouTubers won't tell you. Hey Joelle, welcome back to my channel. Today's video we're going to be talking about burnout, how to recognize it, how to deal with it, and also how to avoid it. So burnout is something that is not spoken about enough. As a chronic overachiever / perpetual busybody, I know firsthand just how overwhelming and anxiety-inducing life can be. Productivity is nice, but it oftentimes comes at a cost, and that cost should just never be your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. I'm someone who struggles with burnout a lot, but there are things you can do to make the whole process easier. I think the first step to all of this is learning how to practically recognize burnout before it becomes too serious. Burnout is a state of mental and/or physical fatigue and exhaustion. This generally stems from, having a lot on your plate or feeling like you have a lot on your plate. So burnout, as most people see it, is primarily an emotional / mental state. Identify symptoms, mental and physical symptoms of burnout as disillusionment, disinterest, lack of motivation. Moving on from the mental and emotional signs of burnout, I think it's important to also draw attention to how physical burnout can be. Fatigue, sleeping irregularities, so if you're sleeping too much or sleeping too little. Other signs of burnout include stomach, bowel irregularities, and changes in appetite. So this could be things like nausea, diarrhea, upset stomach, increase or loss of appetite. My key way of recognizing physical burnout is low immune response. When I'm getting sick all the time, it's because I am burnt out. Now this can be things like getting cold, getting viruses, getting tonsillitis. Those are all signs that your body needs a break. It's like your mind also needs a break. Now that we've spoken about how to recognize burnout, let's talk about how we can address it. The most important tip I have for you is to rewire your mind. This means shifting your mindset, shifting the way you talk about yourself, the way you think about work, the way you think about productivity. I think there are two ways people get burnt out. Firstly, it's just pressures of everyday life. Sometimes things just feel a lot, and you start deeping how much you actually have to do, how much you're dependent on, or it becomes overwhelming. Another source of burnout I've recognized has been pressure from the culture. And I mean this on two counts. I think firstly, there's mainstream culture. People ain't talking about this enough. Our society at the moment seems to be obsessed with productivity. That 24/7 hustle grind culture mentality thing, I can't subscribe to it anymore. I do think in a general sense, it's important to recognize how far our culture, how far social media plays into this idea that we have to be constantly busy. On the second count, there is ethnic culture. If you were eldest daughter in a POC family, if you're of color, generally speaking, you will understand what I'm saying when I say there is this indescribable pressure for us to achieve everything. You've heard them say, oh, my mom wants me to be a doctor or a lawyer. Two of the most intense jobs you could have. Because of the racist and misogynistic society we live in, there is always pressure on ethnic minorities. There's always pressure on women to do everything. So it is very difficult for us to just exist in this world, but like subconsciously we feel this need to overcompensate. A lot of POC families also reinforce and reiterate that rhetoric. I can understand where it comes from. It does end up taking a toll on us. It's a lot of opportunity for burnout, which is why I think it's so important for us to rewire our minds, to focus on positive self-talk, to focus on dislodging and breaking down that linear connection between productivity and self-worth, because it doesn't exist. Now you're working on your self-talk, my next tip is to identify, minimize, and or eliminate things that trigger you. You need to kind of look at it and think, okay, is this person appreciating how hard I'm working, or are they making me feel like I need to do even more? Sometimes it takes difficult conversations to where you have to make boundaries and say, yeah, you and I can't talk about work together, because the approach you take is not conducive to my personal growth. It's not conducive to my self-appreciation and my ability to see myself and to love myself. There's a reason why so many of our mothers and our aunties and our grandmothers are burnt out. I can embrace the rest of my culture, but what I'm not going to do is take on this hustle mentality. That's not something you have to engage with. The same thing goes for social media. I can't watch the videos of like productivity too tough. I make personal growth videos, yes, but I will always emphasize the need for rest. A lot of content creators don't do that. This is how I make £20,000 in a day. That's all well and good, but you're not talking about how difficult that is to sustain. That sometimes social media is not the one. And a lot of it just boils down to being able to make boundaries for yourself. It's important that you find the things that trigger you, the people that trigger you, the scenarios and situations that trigger you, and get rid of them. The next thing you need to do is structure your events and responsibilities. This is a game changer. As somebody who myself has a lot on my plate, I underestimated the power of writing things down. Make a note of everything, whether this is you physically writing it down on a piece of paper, on a notepad, or it's you doing it digitally, making a note on your phone, on your notes app, or making yourself a voice memo or a voice recording. Because I was that person who's like, oh, I remember everything. That's when you can start getting overwhelmed. Everything becomes messy. You can't really see how everything fits into each other, which is so important when it comes to avoiding burnout. It's all about making things attainable and doing things in manageable chunks. For me personally, I like to do mine digitally. I'll do something when I'm out and I'll do it on my phone and I'll put it in my notes app and then I'll transfer it later to Notion. Personally speaking, I like to use Notion to organize my stuff, my tasks, my to-do lists, everything like that, my events. I use Notion and my calendar app on my phone and my iPad to do this, but also scheduling the responsibilities, your tasks, your events. Putting them into a calendar helps so much. Gives you a visual of how long you have until things are due, how much time you have to work towards something or to prepare for something. It seems very simple, but it is a lifesaver. As well as that, I recommend time blocking, which is essentially when you take tasks that are similar and clump them together, doing the same process over and over again in order to get yourself into a flow state. I find that works really well for me. But yeah, that's just another tip. Another thing I would say is so important is to keep things separate. You might have academic, you might have career, you might have YouTube. Keep all those things separately. Now, if you're doing it on an analog way, so just like pen and paper, have different notepads for it, where you can separate each thing, because that helps you to not get overwhelmed, because you can clearly visualize each event, each responsibility, each task, and break it down into steps, because then everything feels a little bit more manageable, and you also feel a lot more productive, because it's like each step feels like its own kind of project. So now that you've come up with some kind of systems and practical steps as to how you would want to kind of organize your responsibilities and your tasks, I think it's also important to work these things around your actual life. And it's not healthy to only be working all the time. It's so important to have time when you're not doing anything. You're just existing and just doing things you enjoy. Everybody needs time to decompress, which is why I recommend always dedicating time to letting yourself rest, letting yourself recuperate. I don't just mean sleeping or taking naps or whatever, but also actually doing things you enjoy. So whether it's hobbies, so creative things, like painting, writing, crocheting, to the gym, whatever it is, things that nurture your spiritual self, the things like meditation, prayer, journalism. Those are things I really recommend implementing and keeping central to your life. They will help you to find a balance between work, play, rest, and enjoyment. But yeah, like I've been saying throughout this video, I understand that burnout is something that a lot of people deal with. I understand how difficult it can be to avoid those things. I do hope this video has made it a little clearer in terms of how to recognize it, some of the ways of dealing with it, and also how to kind of avoid it in the first place. If this video is helpful for you, then do let me know in the comments. Much love, stay blessed, and I'll see you next week.